right, guys, so welcome back to another episode of Off Air with Alex, the show that gives you a sneak behind the scenes at the private lives of celebrities, influencers, journalists, politicians. And today we actually don't have a journalist you have seen on the TV at night in your hometown just yet, but we've got a journalist who actually wants to be there so very badly. His name is Jaden Jefferson, joining us from Toledo, Ohio. Jaden, you are an amazing young man. You're going to be 13 really soon. And you've interviewed some crazy people. How are you doing, first off?
I am doing great, Alex. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
That's awesome. You actually interviewed me a few days ago, so now we're switching roles. Let's start off with, you aren't just some, casual blogger or writer. You actually interview real-life doctors, real-life astronauts, I saw, some really great historical figures. What drives you at such a young age to be a student journalist? You've interviewed Oprah, Ellen, who else? What drives you to do this?
Well, for me, it's all about a passion for storytelling and also keeping people informed. So with all the things that are happening now that happened, there's some things that happened in 2020 that got a lot of coverage. And then there's a lot of things happening in 2021. So for me, it's mostly about making sure people are more informed about what's happening in their community and making it their day easier. So I provide coverage of a lot of different things, but I think one of the biggest things I do cover, well, at this time, is COVID, because there's a lot of confusion as to who's getting the vaccine and when, who's eligible, who's not. So that's one of the big things. And then also just the simple day-to-day things, whether that is a car accident in an area they should avoid or things of that nature. So for me, it's always been about a passion for storytelling, even maybe filmmaking for a little bit. So, doing those kinds of things, that's my passion's always been.
That's incredible. Talk to me about how you got started. I mean, you've been doing this for 2 or 3 years, but you had a big break. Tell me how you got into journalism and how you got that big break with Miss Elizabeth Warren. I think that's who it was, right?
That is correct. So 2019, the summer of 2019, Elizabeth Warren was campaigning for president, and it was a long election season, but she was campaigning here in Toledo, Ohio, and she was holding a rally, and this was all before COVID. So everyone was tightly packed in. And she was doing a speech a little bit about why she should be elected. And I think she was speaking to middle America, and Toledo is definitely a city for that. So when she was here, she made a lot of points, and I got to interview her when she spoke to the press after the event. And I got to get in a question or two. And of course, when any presidential candidate is in the area, there is a lot of media coverage. So there are probably maybe 20 reporters in the room. So when I asked her a question, that was just to be used later in the story that I was going to air. But after that, apparently the clip got posted by reporter CNN, MJ Lee. And right after that, I mean, just my Twitter feed blowing up with people commenting and saying, wow, who is this? And, all the different questions that come with a viral video. So I think that was kind of my big break. And ever since then, journalism has just been a big thing for me.
That's incredible. I've been a writer for most of my life. I wasn't in journalism until I was, 18 or 19. You beat me by like 10 years. Talk to me about being in that kind of press situation, especially around a presidential candidate. Were you intimidated? I mean, there's some folks there that have been in this for 30 years, and you're right there alongside with them.
I would say not so much, considering the fact, that I think everyone was there for the same reason, and not everyone else knew what was really happening anyway. So for me, it was just, seeing if I could get a question, and if I did, great. And I could leave with a soundbite or two that could be used in my story later. So, just knowing what the event is, maybe not knowing how it's going to go, but just knowing what the event is, and hopefully, have something that people can benefit from knowing about that candidate.
Now, Jaden, I have tried to interview presidential candidates when they've come to my part of Pennsylvania, and I've not been able to do it. How did you get in there and they weren't like, no, Mr. 12-year-old, scram, go away? How did you get yourself in there to make them say, hey, this kid's for real? You really want to make sure viewers are informed?
I think for me, I guess a lot of people would assume many different things about 12-year-olds or 11-year-olds. But I would say for me, it was just about, just for, I guess, make a good impression so that people, knew what I was talking about. And I knew what I was talking about. So, making sure they knew who I was, what my goals are, and not that I'm just, asking basic questions that anyone could ask. So I wasn't asking questions about what her favorite color was. I was asking questions about what she's doing for people of color. So I think that's really what it's been about.
I love that. You get right to the information and the heart of the issue for folks. That's probably why you resonate with a lot of people so much. Why do you go after the politics of this? I've seen interviews you've done with CBS this morning. You say politics are really important to you. What about politics do you like so much?
Well, I think it's all about accountability for me. So there has been a lot that has happened over in 2020, which is unforgettable. But I would say accountability is the main part. So if there wasn't anyone holding all of these politicians accountable, then who is? So that's why politics is really important to me, and not just about just your average politicians, your mayor, your city council. I'm also talking about the people that run jobs many people may not know about. So that includes maybe the auditor. What average resident knows what their auditor is doing and what their office is doing? So shining a light a little bit on that. And then with what happened after George Floyd, what are the police department doing? What is their day-to-day protocol, and how are they enforcing it? So that's my big thing. So it's all about accountability.
Accountability is really important in journalism. You're in the right industry. Talk to me about some of the more famous interviews you got to do after talking with Senator Warren. I know I saw you on Ellen once. I saw you talk with Miss Oprah Winfrey, which is a dream interview of mine. So you've already accomplished that. What were those two interviews like?
So speaking with both celebrities, I'm not the person who does celebrity interviews on a day-to-day basis, but when I did get to speak with them, you get to learn a little bit more about the celebrities than what you already knew, and maybe even clear up some misconceptions that people may have had. So, when I was speaking to Brad Pitt or Oprah Winfrey, the interview wasn't just about what other reporters are talking about. I'm talking with them when I was talking to them just about what passions they have, what they may have pursued if they didn't pursue acting or journalism. So that is, I think, what made those interviews special. So they're very interesting people who are down to earth. And, if you really talk to them, you can learn a lot, about what they like to do in their spare time, what they were doing before they became an actor or journalist. So I think that's the thing I kind of took away from both the interviews.
Yeah, and you, as would I, you got emotional on the Ellen Show because she does so much great stuff in this country for millions and millions of people. What was one thing you took away from learning about her, maybe off the air when the lights are off and stuff? Did you guys have any fun personal moments that you were like, wow, she's really, really cool?
Well, I would say, just from meeting Ellen, she seems like a real down to earth person, and I think that doing good is, that's part of her brand. At the end of her show, it's be kind to one another. So, speaking with her, it gives her joy, to give joy to other people. Even when she announced that I was getting new equipment, I could just tell that she was very, generous about doing that and happy to do it. So I think that's, the kind of thing I took away from meeting Ellen. And, she's a busy person, but during that interview, she set aside that time to learn about me, what I'm about. And I think that's been a great, part of my experience at the Ellen Show.
That was awesome. So let's go away from celebrity stuff right now, since you like more of the hard-hitting journalistic stuff, like the politics and all of that. How do you plan your day, or how do you pick a topic to dive into? You said you always share traffic information. You talked to a NASA person the other day. You interviewed me, random person in the middle of Pennsylvania. How do you pick your topics and your subjects to report on?
So for me, it's usually the biggest story of the day. So whatever that big story is, that's the one I'm pursuing. And as of right now, there's a lot of snow on the ground. And, I try to choose the story that I can also make so it's not so generic or something that people have already heard, but, add a unique twist to it. So today it's been snowfall. So what about snow is special? Because we get snow at this time every year. So that's what's the day to day for me. So picking a subject I can speak to, someone who's going to give me a lot of information and do it in a great way. So I don't use sound bites from interviews that aren't, good or won't be beneficial. So I choose that big story. I find the people who are who are involved in it most, who are experiencing the issue. So, for example, throughout the pandemic, I've been talking with doctors, nurses, teachers, people who are on the front lines dealing with the virus. So it's been, that kind of thing. So, getting to the heart of what's happening and not just talking to just anyone who may not have a direct relation to the story.
Walk us through your day. I'm sure you wake up like a normal person does, but walk us through your day. Do you try to kind of check Twitter to see what's the hot topics, and then how do you find the story within the story? To kind of make sure there's some viewer benefit. Walk us through your day. With you shoot it all, you edit it all. Tell us how you do it.
So I start very early. So right when the morning news start, I've always watched the morning news. So starting very early and ending very late.
Like 4 a.m. early, or how early?
About 4:30. So that's where the news starts here in Toledo. So I'm up and
Jaden,
at
you're
'em,
killing me. It's so early.
It's not an easy thing to do. You definitely have to get into the routine, but the weekends it starts a little later, so you get in those extra Z's on the week.
Yes, you gotta sleep. Everybody's gotta sleep. But go ahead. Tell me about your day.
Absolutely. So starting very early, I check to see if there's anything breaking, and in Toledo there usually is. So the big news times, I would say, they're not maybe not be the highest ratings of the day, but they're definitely where a lot of the action is happening. Early in the morning, people may not be up, but there's always a breaking story. So whether that is a car accident, a fire, or a big development that happened overnight involving a case or a scandal. And then late in the evening, there's also a lot of things that happen. So a few other days ago, there was a story about a refinery in Toledo that had, there was a leak. So a lot of people were concerned about that in the neighborhood. So it was 11 o'clock, and a lot of people aren't maybe up. They're getting ready for work in the morning, but that big story happened. So my goal is by the time they wake up in the morning to have something where they can benefit from. So throughout the day, I'm going to be speaking with the people who are affected by it, talking to the city to see what they're saying about it, and make sure that there's transparency there about the issue, because if it's not addressed, the residents that live in the area are going to be concerned about what's happening. So that's my big goal, is just to make sure that whatever happened, I catch people up to so they know what's happening and they're always staying in the know.
And you shoot and edit all this yourself, right? I know that grandma sometimes drives you to places, to scenes.
Yeah, so I shoot and edit the whole story. And depending on the type of story, there are different ways to tell stories. Sometimes I tell them in a package, or sometimes I'll do an interview and I'll cut it down because that person has a lot of great things to say and great advice. So that's what, I try to do. So for a package, I'm trying to make it 90 seconds to where I can fit in a lot of information, but at the same time, not take too much of the viewer's time. Or if it's a fascinating interview I've done, what I try to do is cut that down to just the specifics, but at the same time, making sure people understand while also giving the great sound bite. So I try to keep that under 3 minutes, but again, you want to make sure that you're, telling a great story at the same time while making sure you're taking up the right amount of time.
There are news directors who are in charge of newsrooms across this country that are going to be loving everything you bring to them whenever you can work full time. Talk to me about maybe a dream job. Where do you want to be, work? Where do you want to maybe spread your journalism wings?
My goal has always been to get to that bigger market while keeping that local experience. So, I want to spend a lot of time here in Toledo because, even for a city that's maybe smaller than others, we're still a big city though, but we're kind of the smallest big city in the country. And the thing about it though is there are a lot of experienced and talented journalists here in Toledo. Some have gotten their start here, some have come from other cities, but I could learn a lot from what happens in Toledo with all the news that's happening and gain a lot of experience. So in the long term, one of the biggest goals I have is maybe moving to a bigger market like New York City or Chicago or Philadelphia, big TV markets that have a lot of stories happening and where you can really, spread your wings as far as journalism. So covering all the different types of topics, whether those are investigative pieces, crime pieces, I want to be in the center of the action and maybe even do some network reporting as well. So my goal has always been to, start small and then grow bigger.
Have you had any job offers yet?
Not as of yet, although we are working out a deal on a potential news show that could air in the U.S. Additional details on that are, forthcoming. But that's the big thing right now.
I love that. Well, you're going to be doing great. One last thing I want to kind of talk to you about. When you're not doing news and you're not preparing a story or writing a package or cutting down an interview, what can Jaden be found doing? What do you like to do in your off time when you're not, writing something up?
Well, of course, I am the type of person who likes to, spend a lot of time watching a lot of different shows or streaming and binging. That's my plan for this weekend. And then next week I have a 4-day weekend. So of course, more of that. So I've been into a lot of different documentary series on Hulu. So that's been my big thing. I like to watch a lot of the new National Geographic shows that have come out as of recent. Another thing I like to do, I'm not a very athletic person or sportsy person. So with the Super Bowl coming up this weekend, I don't care who wins. I just want a good halftime show.
Right. Same. Retweet.
Right. That's the big thing for me. So normally just, I guess enjoying life.
I love that. One last question I think that I want to ask you. Looking forward for the future of journalism, what do you both want journalism to become, and what do you hope viewers start to value more of? There has been so much craziness and chaos in the last 4 years, 5 years, with journalists getting attacked. What do you want viewers to know about journalism and appreciate more, and what do you want journalists themselves to maybe do better at?
I think my big thing for me is I want companies to start taking local journalism more seriously. There are communities that have just been devastated by a lack of local journalism. And, these companies, they really need to further invest into journalism and not divest into journalism or cut corners in journalism, because good reporting is valued by the viewer, whether they believe that or not. And it's also important that they're not pushing their own ideals onto these local newsrooms. They have their own way of doing things and they do it very well. These people have a lot of experience. They do great reporting, and the people in the community benefit from it. So, even here in Toledo, there have been instances where journalism has been hit hard. And one of the big companies that have, injected their own, I guess, bias or cut corners as far as things is one of our newscasts aren't even produced here in Toledo. They're produced in South Bend, Indiana. And I can imagine that happening in other cities. So I don't want to see that happening in other cities, because you need those people here on the ground covering it. So that's my big thing. And I think also the viewers should also, be more in touch with the local news, because you're going to miss a lot of things if you're not in touch with it. And a lot of these stories, they're likely directly affecting them. So that's my big thing. Just, for the viewers, be more engaged in the journalism. And for the companies, I think, and for the journalists, I think it's important that they invest more in the local journalism, because it does matter.
It does matter. I really echo what you say, that people should be more informed and involved in their local communities and knowing what's going on. Jaden Jefferson, thank you so much. You're an inspiration to so many of us who have been doing it way longer than you, and you're doing it better than us. Jaden, thanks so much for joining us, and hope everything goes well. I'm sure I'll keep up with you online.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Sure, and I thank all of you at home for watching another episode of Off Air with Alex. This episode is all done right now. Please like this video and subscribe below. We'll see you all next time.